This really gives me an opportunity to say a couple of things. First, how much I value, and I know the whole City Council and Councilmember Albert Tarantino is here as well, but I speak to the entire City Council, how much we value the Chamber's partnership, not just as an advocate for businesses within New Rochelle, but really as a pillar of our civic life, organizing so many different activities that define who we are in this community, and for that I'm enormously grateful. And your honorees really typify that tradition. And of course, Bob had to give me the list because he doesn't trust me to remember who the honorees are, but let me say just a couple of words about each. First, Jeffrey Deskovic. We just met for the first time a few minutes ago, and I'm going to repeat publicly what I said privately, and that is just imagine the strength of character that's required to endure adversity that most of us can hardly imagine, and yet afterwards not retreat into some kind of inward bitterness, but instead find a way to transform that experience into something that uplifts others. And that is just a remarkable tribute to strength of character, and a wonderful example for all of us. And it's really an honor to meet you, and I think everyone here is joined in feeling a great sense of appreciation for what it is that you've accomplished. And let's give him a big round of applause.
So what I'd like to do first is talk a little bit about Jeff Deskovic and bring him up, and do Jeff first so he can catch his plane that he has to catch. Now, those of you who know me for a while know that I've been doing morning radio for about a decade now. And I became aware of Jeff through a wonderful defense attorney by the name of Murray Richman. And he told me about this young man who, at the age of 16, was accused of a rape and a murder that he did not commit. And he was so, I guess the right word is persecuted. He was so interrogated to such a degree that at the age of 16, he wound up in a fetal position on the floor and admitting to a crime he did not commit. He spent 16 years in jail for the crime he did not commit. And the Innocence group and other people like Murray Richman, they cried for his release through his own work, through his own effort, through his work. When he was in prison, he ultimately won his release. And he was vindicated not just by the courts. It wasn't something technical. It wasn't an issue where they said, yeah, the DNA doesn't match, go. Of course the DNA didn't match. And there are lots of reasons why it didn't, and lots of bad police work leading to the fact that it took too long to free him. And it's just an incredible story. So what does he do? He goes and he gets his college degrees. He's working right now on a master's program. He has been named one of the daily news, I guess it's top people of New York. Now, he did get money, and that's what this is about. Those of you who read the papers, national and local, know that he was awarded the largest single amount of money ever given to an exoneree in the history of the country. Now, I say this lightheartedly, and I've said this to Jeff on the radio, so I may as well repeat it here. If I got $44 million, my significant other aside, I would already be in Acapulco with Kate Upton and Rihanna. But what does this guy do? He takes the money and he sets up the Jeff Deskovic Foundation for social justice. And he gives back. Now, yeah, he runs a business. In fact, I brought him in to meet Michelle's family before, Frank's family. Tell him what you did. Well, I started this energy business, and boy, he'd be a great news guy. Imagine at Lincoln. Well, there was a disruption at the play. The guy has had a second life. He's working on his PhD. He teaches college. He flies all over the world giving speeches to help people who are in the situation that he was once. I don't know what else to say. He's one of the true heroes I've met in my life, and just a wonderful human being. And with that, I would like to introduce to you and recognize the Chamber of Commerce's Humanitarian of the Year, the first one in the new chamber, to Jeffrey Deskovic. Jeff, thank you very much.
Good evening. I need some energy in the room. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, one more time. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. It's surreal to be here. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever have imagined I would receive an award. Not when I was in Sing Sing, which is here in Westchester County, still doing a life sentence for a crime I didn't commit, and not even post-exoneration, post-release. So it's very humbling and surreal to be honored, and I want to thank everybody that signed off on the award. I know Bob runs the chamber, but obviously he has a board and he has colleagues, and other people signed off on that. I want to thank everyone who came out tonight as well. So I founded and started the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which fights wrongful convictions. We have 4 prongs. We raise awareness, we seek changes in the law in order to prevent wrongful convictions, we work to exonerate people who have already been wrongfully convicted, and we also help reintegrate people once they have been exonerated. I started the organization not because I was a concerned citizen, which is really the position that I wish that I was coming to you tonight from, but instead as a first-person advocate who is trying to take the negative that happened to him and turn it into something positive. I'm trying to get a silver lining out of everything. I spent 16 years in prison, wrongfully convicted of murder and rape, which happened here in Westchester County. My wrongful conviction was caused by a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, and a terrible public defender. The perfect storm. I lost all 7 of my appeals, and I was also turned down for parole because rather than telling the board what they wanted to hear, which was to take responsibility and to express remorse, I instead stood on my innocence, and it cost me an additional year. Ultimately, I was exonerated through further DNA testing, which not only reaffirmed my innocence, but also identified the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was only in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime, he killed another victim 3.5 years later, a school teacher and mother of 2 in Peekskill, which of course is here in Westchester. As I mentioned at the table when I was dining at just a few short minutes ago, I struggle hard against the idea that my case is rare. My case is not rare. Let me share with you some context. In 2014, 125 people were exonerated nationally. In 2013, 91 people were exonerated nationally. And in the year prior to that, the figure was also 91. The National Registry of Exonerations, which collects and centralizes all the exonerations nationally, currently in their research, which only dates back to 1989, they're now up to 1,650-something exonerations that have been chronicled. When you think about that, there were 13 people that I personally did time with that were proven innocent through the court, either prior to me or after my exoneration, that I met in the course of those 16 years. I really believe it's the iceberg effect that we're talking about here. In other words, what we see above the surface is just a fraction of the larger whole of what's going on below. I believe the percentage of wrongfully convicted people nationally is 15 to 20%. There was a recent article in which it was reported that the FBI admitted that for 20 years it sent agents into the courtroom to give so-called scientific testimony on the significance of a match when it came to hair, all the while knowing that that was a junk science and did not have any validity. Many junk sciences have passed for evidence in our courtrooms. bullet-lead analysis, which is the idea that you can determine based on its chemical compositions, not only what gun a bullet came from, but even tracing it back to the manufacturer. No validity, tire tracks, bite marks, voice analysis, even boot sizes, even fingerprints, where there's really no universal consensus on how many points of match on a palm has to be there in order to constitute a match, and with no way at all, no scientific testing, no scientific underpinnings to be able to know, well, just how many people would be capable of making the same points of match. No universal standard on that. Each one of those things has impacted thousands of people, out of which it's reasonable to conclude that some of those people were actually innocent. But what is it that causes wrongful conviction? What can we do about it? Coerced false confessions, where we need videotaping to ensure that police don't lie on the stand, that they don't conveniently leave out illegal tactics which they engage in, and it protects honest cops from false allegations of coercion. Coerced false confessions have been the cause of wrongful convictions in 25% of the cases. Misidentification, the leading cause of wrongful conviction, at 75%. Informant testimony, in which somebody gets a deal, a benefit in exchange for giving testimony, has been a cause of wrongful convictions in 15% of the cases. Bad lawyering. Literally, when it comes to the public defender, you get what you pay for. Which is to say, if you pay nothing at all, I'll let you finish for me. We still don't preserve evidence. So if you've been lucky enough to have been wrongfully convicted in one of the cases that could be subjected to DNA testing, the first barrier is whether or not that evidence has been lost or destroyed. There's no law that mandates the preservation of evidence, and so often we have a literal trashing of the truth. I started the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice for the reasons that I mentioned. I mean, I wanted to be the person that I wish I had on the outside. Nobody should have to go through what I went through. In terms of distinguishing from the other organizations in the field, firstly, most organizations in the field will only take on a case if it has DNA in it. But that's only 5 to 12%. My organization takes on non-DNA cases as well as DNA. Because I don't believe it's fair that if somebody is innocent and they have a way of demonstrating that, and there's a way to prove it if there's but somebody to do some boots on the ground, that we're instead going to turn that person away because it can't be proven through a microscope. So that's the first distinguishing feature. The second thing, we advocate for certain policy positions that the other organizations are silent about. I referenced that I had been denied parole because I asserted my innocence. But I advocate a policy reform on that. But the other organizations, while mentioning it in the narrative of individual people's cases and stories, they won't advocate any type of legislation on that to address that particular deficiency. The third thing is on the reintegrative side. My foundation, we provide short-term housing. So we have a 2-bedroom apartment lease, which has served as that crucial housing for 4 different wrongfully convicted people, one of whom was able to get a bachelor's degree from Mercy College and also open a juice bar as a result of having some stability in the housing area. So that reintegrative component is another distinguishing feature, along with us referring exonerees to potential job openings, whenever there's a match of a skill set and a business need. Another thing is that we do use parole as a stopgap measure. So if any of our clients come up for parole, we send them, the parole board, a letter advocating their release, outlining the primary and secondary reasons for our belief in their innocence. Why? Because although our goal is always to prove innocence, it's better for that long, slow process to take place while somebody is free, albeit on parole, rather than still sitting in prison as the slow wheels of justice turn. Lastly, we're the only entity that was started by somebody coming from my position, which has an exonerative component to it, that put in some of the money that they received. In the nearly 3 years now that we have been in existence, our highlights have included, we helped free William Lopez, who was incarcerated for 23.5 years prior to being exonerated, collaboratively with my organization. Mr. Lopez had been wrongfully convicted of a shotgun murder in Brooklyn. Incidentally, he remained with us for about a year and a half before passing away. We convinced the parole board in 2 different instances to release people on parole based on innocence grounds. We have the apartment, which has helped 4 people, and we also put together a thinking jurors manual and distributed it outside of state and federal courthouses with basic information which we think that potential jurors should have. I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I do wear a few different hats. So changing gears, I want to share that the business entity that's a member of the Chamber of Commerce here in New Rochelle, the name of the company is called Majestic Oil Corp. My business partner is with me here, Ms. Nancy Lopez. We have flyers from the business, which is back there. We have our low price guarantee. In a nutshell, if homeowners or business owners, they fax us their most recent bill, we guarantee to beat it by 10 cents a gallon, which it is quite a bit of money when you think about the thousands of gallons. But lastly, more importantly, the most important feature of the company is we continue my philanthropical leanings. We have a give back program in which nonprofit entities as well as faith-based organizations of whatever denomination and faith, we donate 15% of the profit of the oil company from the sale of oils back to those entities so they can continue their good works. Again, the flyers are in the back if anybody is interested. I can't really believe if I'm not really even sure if I'm sitting here speaking or if this is all just figment of my imagination because I couldn't deal with the prison bars or the cell walls any longer. I'm no longer really sure whether I'm actually here speaking, but I guess I am. I'm not sure of that, but I wish I could stay the rest of the night. If I had my way, I would. Unfortunately, I have to catch a plane. I have to speak at a conference tomorrow in Florida. I have to do 2 presentations, so I have to leave in a few minutes. But I really do feel bad that I don't want to feel like I'm just coming and eating and running, I guess, at the event version of that. But I'm sorry for that. But thank you so much for giving me your attention, and I don't think I'm ever going to forget this night that I got an award here from the Chamber of Commerce. It means so much.